Alright, hello, and welcome to American Dreamland. I'm Max Chavez.
I'm Misty Stone.
And I'm Christopher Lockett. So before we get started, I just wanted to do some quick news, because last week we talked about the Democratic redistricting push, and the Assembly Bill 604 did pass the state legislature, so and through California fashion, we have to all vote on it, a proposition to vote on this redistricting. Also, it's like only a special case because they'll redraw them for 2026 through 2030, but then the nonpartisan commission are going to redraw them in 2031. So
I legitimately have to say California is kind of the prime example of the Kent Brockman quote. Well, folks, we have it. Democracy just doesn't work. Because so many of our just weird problems in politics, and that's not to say we'd be pure and running an empathetic Nordic country otherwise in the state, but so much of this is just our dumb proposition system where how a normal government would, and sorry for being a little America pilled, but it'd be hey, we're the legislator, we're passing a law. Hey, I'm the governor, I approve this law. Some people are mad about this law. Let's have the courts determine if this is actually legal. It basically is just that, it's legislator votes on law, governor approves it, and if there's opposition, it goes through the courts. Whereas we just be alright, legislator voted on something with supermajority, now we have to have voters go to it. Or sometimes the legislator will pass a law, and then the voters are we don't like that, so we're just going to randomly have another law.
The maps that we're voting on are the same ones that we talked about last week.
It's so funny, because I remember the proposition we had to get a citizens redistricting commission so the legislator couldn't write the maps, which is just it's great. It's awesome. I love our proposition system. Admittedly, we have legal weed because of our proposition system, but it's also why we have forced condom usage in porn, which is crazy that was an actual debate we had 2 times in this state, as opposed to just I don't know, maybe that's an OSHA issue because they're workers and it's worker health and safety. I don't know. But yeah, there's that, and also why our smoking age is 21.
Mm-hmm. And we don't have flavored tobacco right anymore.
No,
was that something else?
I don't know if that was a proposition or just the legislator pretending to be hey, trans fats are bad. Let's, do that instead of fixing food deserts.
Excuse me for my Ohio ignorance.
I mean, I'm sure there was a lib town in Ohio that did that too.
I mean, my college town's pretty liberal.
Yeah.
But I can't remember if we did up the smoking age.
Oh, I meant the trans
the flavorless
fat. And maybe the flavored tobacco thing too. I don't know.
I remember when I was just starting college, all the vapes stores were just everywhere. Is the big thing. Big new thing. You could just get a vape whenever and go to the vape bar. And yeah. And nobody cared about the health. And then I had to debate with my friends. They were well, vaping's better for you than smoking. And my friend and I, who were in the same public health program, were well, we don't know that right now. And they were no, it is.
Yeah.
And then you had all those fun flavored cigarillos or whatever.
Yeah. It is on the one hand, it is I was talking about this with Chris earlier. It's just so many times I will just exist and be nah, these crazy reactionaries are wrong, and then, like, I just have a totally normal anecdotal encounter where, like, this thing happens, or it's like, do you know if we don't ban flavored tobacco, they're gonna make a bunch of things that are just, like, appeal to kids and candy flavored? And I go, like, nah, I don't think so. And then one time, my friend came back from, like, Guatemala, and, like, offered me a cigarette, and I was like, we were drinking, so I was like, yeah, why not? So I started smoking it, and I was like, this is weird. This is not like any cigarette I've ever had before. And then she proceeds to tell me it's like, oh, it's a special Guatemalan cigarette. Instead of menthol, it's orange or fruit flavored.
Oh.
And I'm like, what? And then she hands me the box, and I'm looking at it, and it, I swear to God, looks like a nerd's box. So
how fun.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever have, like, a hookah culture?
There, I do remember when there were hookah bars everywhere. Definitely when I was living in the city and back in LA, but not too many up here.
Yeah, because we had a big, like, the thing to do before you were 21 was you'd go to the hookah bar in the college town.
Yeah.
And you just smoke, which can't be better for you than just smoking a cigarette.
No. Yeah. We should probably also discuss the other big news story. Folks, we we apologize for any kind of, like, we're sorry for a subject matter that we haven't fully covered but definitely addressed and talked about on this podcast. Folks, we're sorry we created a fervor over all this Epstein stuff. We just got the tapes released from Ghislaine Maxwell. And a couple things. One, she's totally not a Mossad agent. And she also has never knowingly dealt with a Mossad agent. So again, my heart goes out to Miss Maxwell, who clearly did not have a great relationship with her father if she did not know Robert Maxwell, famous British publishing magnate. Also, let's just say, a very close relationship with the Israeli intelligence community. So there's that. One, despite all the sex trafficking and crimes, I gotta say, apologies. Two people who Ghislaine can explicitly say she recognized and never saw do sex crimes, Trump and Clinton. So, mea culpa. Clearly, this is a case of a woman trying to atone, and being honest, and absolutely not saying whatever is necessary to get a pardon, while also reminding people that the Epstein case is, as many people have called it, load-bearing pedophilia.
Yeah.
All right, then. Yeah.
So kudos to totally not problematic dudes, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump.
So you think if she does get the pardon, she'll go to Israel?
I mean, what's the point? Like, the thing is like, it is that usually when people do, like, why Brett Ratner and Bryan Singer have in the Me Too era rediscovered their family traditions and faith. It was a weird coincidence that required them to move to Tel Aviv. I don't think she'll need to, per se, because she'll be, like, pardoned and has money. And there's, like, plenty of other, like, European countries. Like, the thing is, and to be fair, like, I haven't really researched this, so a lot of my first-hand knowledge does come from a very weird episode of Law & Order. But according to my knowledge of various Israeli treaties, is that due to the right of return, Israel is open to doing extra-national prosecutions, but they are very against extradition. In other words, if you have legitimately committed a crime and are running away to Israel, typically, even if the Israeli government wants to get rid of you, they will just charge you through the Israeli courts and have you serve your prison sentence in Israel rather than your country of origin.
Mm.
So I feel like she wouldn't need to worry about the extradition status because she'll have been pardoned for everything she was convicted. But yeah, totally cool, totally good that we have an honest thing, and it's super weird how she doesn't remember anyone except people who are already dead in prison or did absolutely nothing wrong. It's weird that she knows those names specifically and can speak entirely, but in which case, let's speaking of kind of disclosure and acts of radical honesty, I think it's time we started up on today's topic, which I have not really told you all a lot about. I know I've hinted it, but our subject today is going to be on a fellow called John Lear. So before I get kind of started with the research and everything I have, let me just ask, have either of you two heard of John Lear?
No.
No, I think only maybe in passing.
Right. Have you two heard of Bob Lazar?
Yes, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
I haven't.
So we'll get to that, but clearly a figure who needs his own deep dive, though we're going to be alluding to him a lot because of the story. But Bob Lazar is one of the famous UFO whistleblowers who claimed to work for Area 51 and see things. And then, of course, when people looked into that, it was like, it's weird that you claim to have never written a thesis, yet you also claim to have a master's degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which requires you to write a thesis. But anyway, this is not to judge Bob Lazar, but I feel I wanted to talk about John Lear for a few reasons. One is there's definitely something that is starting to make a resurgence for various reasons that we can talk about, is the UFO phenomenon, or now UAP, Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, definitely making a comeback. And also, I feel that there is something about, in our first two initial full episodes, it was here's a thing to explore through individuals. We had Mel and Stan Johnson. And I was wondering, could we have someone who has the radical truth-telling and expressing their own experience, however limited, with also a sense of believability like Stan Johnson, but also just the insane narcissism and just fantastic storytelling of, I feel like you're bullshitting me, or there's something else going on of Mel. And that leads us into John Lear, who I do have to say, the way I describe it is, what if Stan Johnson, instead of writing about Bigfoot, wrote about UFOs, and was also a prolific Failson and complete and total narcissist? The answer to that is John Lear, who legitimately may be the single individual most responsible for the interest and focus in alien conspiracies and ufology in the late 80s and early 90s. It was obviously a lot of people. There was a community like MUFON before then and everything, but he basically brought it so that the X-Files could be a hit because they could talk about alien abductions and people would have an understanding of all of that. Why there were celebrations of Area 51 on the 50th anniversary and everything. And yeah, he is incredibly important with what he's told. He is also just clearly a guy who I do not feel like I've ever heard him say anything like Mel, where it is I am doubling down and going through this. He has an era of Stan Johnson, because from what I can tell, he was not someone who readily tried to profit off of his disclosure and everything. And, like, everything he says with a sense of, like, personal conviction, I believe. But also, unlike Stan Johnson, will constantly complain about how much his life sucks because of his disclosure, without it being brought up. Like, at least with Stan Johnson, who's like, I'm not doing any of these things, was after direct accusations that he was a fraud. Whereas John Lear will just go like, how you doing, John? It's like, well, the last 10 years have been nice because I haven't had to go on the Art Bell show and lost jobs because of it. There is also, unlike, Mel does the classic liar thing of consistency and over details, whereas, like, John Lear's just like, oh, did I say that? Or I don't know. Or it's like, I was wrong before. This is actually what's going on. Like, he'll just say what's happening. So let's get into this. John Lear was born in 1942. And he's from the prominent Lear family, which in Nevada is basically royalty. Specifically because he is the son of Learjet inventor Bill Lear, the founder of Learjets, as well as the man who invented the car radio and 8-track player.
Oh.
So,
okay.
And,
I'm just picturing Nevada royalty. Just
I know.
The most white trash, low rent royalty ever.
It is a version of Nevada royalty is the version of Sharon Stone's character in the movie Casino who does not die of an overdose in Skid Row in LA. She's like if Sharon Stone's character was ended up being on like a Real Housewives show. That's what Nevada royalty would be. Also, I will say this, which may play a role in some of the things we learn later. But Bill Lear, we'll just say had, and this is just what they said on Wikipedia, he had a reputation for being difficult. And nothing else was really said about that. But he died in 1978 and was married like 5 times. So like, if you're getting divorced in the 1920s, something's going on. But John Lear has what I would like to call the classical Failson arc, who was great at disappointing his parents, went to multiple colleges. One thing I note is they talk about how not every school he stopped attending was because he fucked up. They said that he had to stop going to his boarding school in Switzerland because he broke too many bones in an airplane crash when he was flying. But I looked it up, and according to the timeline, he was 20 years old when this happened. So I'm wondering why a 20-year-old was at boarding school instead of college, but who knows? But yeah, so he went to multiple colleges. He kind of was like, he was just kind of given for a little while, just like random positions in the family company, to just like, okay, have something on your resume and all of that. He's one of many more accomplished siblings, and by that, in this case, I do mean just like, they are just normal people who probably worked for Learjet or another multinational and like didn't squander the family fortune. Is that despite being from such a prominent and wealthy family, he got nothing from his father's will. He was completely excluded from it, while it was allegedly, quote-unquote, quite generous to John Lear's children. So while Bill Lear may have been difficult, it definitely sounds like he was not very stingy in his will. So it's not like everyone who wronged me gets nothing. It's like, no, most of my fortune will be given away to my family, just not John.
John was just the worst of the worst, I guess.
Well, here's the thing though, is I am firmly in the John Lear is the archetypical fail son. However, I will say that, again, with Bill Lear being difficult, is there are actually some legitimate things of why John Lear is a well-known person completely outside of the UFO field. It started off with he always had a contentious relationship with his father, because John was just wanted to be a pilot more than anything. He first started flying at 14. He did a solo flight at 16. And again, according to a federal affidavit, or according to a legal affidavit he sent to the federal court, in a case where he was claiming how it was impossible for 747s to be a part of the 9/11 attacks. Don't worry, we're going to be getting into that. He said that...
I thought he died in 78.
No, his dad died in 78.
Oh, okay.
Bill Lear died in 2022. But yeah, so, in his affidavit about the truth of 9/11, he claims that he's credible because he holds the most FAA certification of any pilot ever. He has flown over 100 different types of aircrafts, and, not only it was a commercial pilot, so he's not an airline pilot, but he did a lot of like flying of things, including a 16-year tour flying secret missions for the CIA in Southeast Asia, starting in like 1967 or so. So basically the height of the Vietnam War, he was openly saying, yeah, I flew secret missions for the CIA and did things.
Okay.
So
he was good at flying.
Yeah, he's very good at flying, and that's actually one of the reasons he had such a difficult relationship with his father, is his father viewed flying and pilots as a much more kind of mundane, boring labor job, and he wanted his son to be like lawyer, doctor, job in the company, things like that. Whereas like all John wanted to do was apparently fly, for who he was pretty open to that. But yeah, he also, and this is one of the reasons why he played such a big role in the UFO disclosure and helped make it mainstream, is, you know, one, he is legitimately like a legend in the flying world, or at least used to be. Like, he has a lot of connections, and he was genuinely passionate about flying. Like, he's one of those guys who also loves just watching planes take off, stuff like that, doing all of that. And one of his hobbies was going into the middle of the desert and watching them fly planes in a secret military base near Groom Lake, Nevada, which most of us would associate with Area 51. And with that, he also was regularly documenting things. So, in the mid-'80s, he helped local Las Vegas media break a story because there were rumors that development of new stealth aircraft was taking place in the Nevada military bases, but there was no real documentation of that. So when that story broke, John Lear was one of the people who helped uncover that, because he had actually been able to see and get documentation of this experimental aircraft, which turned out to be, I think, like the SR-2 or something. It was basically the, like, big, like, flat stealth bomber thing. So, that came after the U-2. So, like, huge, like, actual thing. He's from, like, a very important family, clearly important in the field, and has helped with major news stories. And this then leads us into the disclosure, because he, based on experiences his father and brother allegedly had, he just on a whim decided to start researching what this whole UFO thing was about. Okay. And after a couple years, he just got a bunch of documents from, like, his couple-year interest, and then just kind of barged into a local Las Vegas television station, and was just like, I have documents. You gotta see. I figured out the alien stuff.
Love that.
Yeah, it's great.
Love that. Let's see. What is the alien stuff? What did he discover?
Well, there's another part of the story is, like, everyone was like, we're humoring you because you're a member of the Lear family, but I don't know. And then a scrappy young reporter by the name of George Knapp happened to overhear the conversation in the hallway, and was just like, well, sir, I'm an investigative reporter. I would like to see these documents, and I will look into them. Which then led to, in 1987, George Knapp interviewed John Lear for his local program for KLAS Channel 8 in Las Vegas, On the Record, where Lear began to discuss what he had seen in the documentations and disclosures of the United States government's specific relationship with UFOs, as well as the history of Area 51. And again, I'll go into this as we're obviously huge fans of Coast to Coast on the show. Are you two familiar with George Knapp?
Like I said, I haven't barely watched any Coast to Coast.
Okay.
Or listened, I should say. Barely listened to any Coast to Coast.
So, George Knapp is a regular weekend host for Coast to Coast AM. He has been with the program for almost 30 years. He started in the Art Bell days. He still will host about once a month or so. And one thing I want to note, especially about a lot of the people and a lot of the research, both that we're going to be engaging with today and just in the conspiratorial sense, is George Knapp definitely will do stories about weird conspiratorial stuff, but he is also like a legitimate investigative journalist. Like, I was just going to be like, oh, like, he has won so many, like, legitimate awards. I think he has something along the lines of, like, over 20 regional Emmys for, like, news reporting on the Las Vegas area. Some of them about, like, the mafia back in the days, like, mentioning Casino. Like, he was one of the reporters who was, like, following, like, the fall of the mafia in the late 70s. Which also meant that, like, he then became, like, good personal friends with a member of the Gaming Commission called Harry Reid, who would later become the senator for Nevada. And, it was basically, like, the guy who every year would be the main media outlet for the Nevada congressional delegation to, like, what are you going to do in Congress this year? So he is a, like, legitimate investigative journalist. Albeit, like, most of his career is about UFO stuff, but he is literally just, like, an absolute shoe leather reporter. This program, like, went viral to UK, and it became an international sensation where people were, like, trading tapes of it, clips were shown on all of that. He was seen in, like, a lot of international TV, and it has to do with what he had been able to show. So as I said, John Lear, just on a whim, decided to start investigating the UFO phenomenon because of both what he had witnessed, his experiences, and again, family members had seen weird things while flying. So he started to talk about some of the things that he had gotten from insiders, including a lot of it was a friend of his named Dennis, who was obviously a pseudonym, and who, as he describes, is originally Dennis was UFO skeptic, but started to realize that John Lear might be up to something once he started working for Area 51. But as he said, that what he had been able to find is the claims basically boils down to what we would consider the, like, standard alien conspiracy theory of the U.S. government and Roswell basically all comes from John Lear's disclosure. He said that, obviously, in the late 1940s, there was an alien craft that crashed. There were multiple bodies that were found that were of extraterrestrial origin, who were the pilots of said vessels. They were, as I said, clearly not of this world. That the government had known about this, and that there were at times that the president had made deals with them. There basically a lot of X-Files lore comes from what John Lear has disclosed. And before you go, oh, wonder how he came up with those ideas, like, these are things the X-Files revealed, like, 10 years after he gave this interview, of, like, the role of what abductions were, what people were doing, the role of government things. And and how we had started to reverse engineer crafts that we were doing. So we were starting to rebuild that were beyond our current understanding of physics, as well as heavily promote, and to my mind, the first mainstream acknowledgement, there were obviously a lot of rumors, of the existence of MJ-12. He never quite called it Majestic 12, I don't think, which was the original name in a separate link of documents that came out in the UFO community a few years earlier. But he called it MJ-12, so it's presumably he was referring to Majestic. And how it was basically a secret intelligence community that was created by President Truman after Roswell to handle the alien issue, and how basically MJ-12 was the secret rulers of the government because of their knowledge, their control over things, what they kept top secret from the president. And again, basically, like, they were the ones who knew everything and were the ones directly dealing with the aliens. Also, one thing to note is he always would refer to MJ-12 throughout his life. He was a huge proponent of Majestic 12, even though the original documents, I believe, were disproved by other UFOologists in the mid-'80s called Stanton Friedman, who once believed them, but then it turned out that the documents had to be a forgery, because they were proclaimed to be written in the late 40s, and yet they were written on a typewriter that wasn't created until the late 1960s. So,
Oh no.
Probably something a little suspicious.
Or did they lie to us?
Who knows?
To hide.
Yeah, so this was revolutionary. He went on a bunch, there were about 2 other programs that George Knapp did on his On the Record program. All of them were huge, and eventually, John Lear, kept going to George Knapp, and he's like, George, I got this friend Dennis. You gotta talk to him. Dennis is gonna do things. I do all this stuff with Dennis. And then, as George Knapp describes it, is he was the anchor. He got promoted to anchor in about 1989, 1990 to the KLS News. And what that program would do is at the end of the 6 o'clock news, they would just do a live interview with some kind of like local figure or national news story. And then one day they canceled, and they were like, it was like a last minute cancellation. And they were like, we got to get someone. So they were desperate to fill time. So George Knapp called John Lear and said, hey, we can hide his identity. Can you get Dennis on the air? Which led to a classic black silhouette voice modulated interview with Dennis, apparently in John Lear's driveway, where he confirms as an Area 51 S4 insider that that everything that John Lear had said was true. And this is where things start to go a little downhill for John Lear. And also, one of the things, because
you think Dennis is just John Lear?
No, I know exactly who Dennis is. I'm about to tell you how we find out who Dennis is, which is why I believe John Lear. Because the way he tells it is, yeah, I was kind of dumb and fucked up real bad, and basically ruined a friend's life. So Dennis was obviously not Dennis. Dennis was the name of the supervisor at Groom Lake, who was kind of like a notorious hard-ass boss. And was the alias used by the aforementioned Bob Lazar. And Bob Lazar basically got outed, according to John Lear, because one of the things they did to help with their disclosure was Bob Lazar would tell John Lear, we're flying another UFO. They always fly them out on Wednesdays. So they would always go I'm doing some night fishing on Wednesday, i.e. they're going to look at UFOs. So after Dennis gets interviewed, one night they go, they realize at one point that they get pulled over by the military because they've broken the quarantine or whatever. And this is when Bob Lazar is still, he's worried, but he hasn't been officially outed yet. So he basically, when they get pulled over, he basically takes out a shotgun and says, I'm going to go run into the desert. and, like, hide so, like, no one knows I was here. And, like, yeah, that's good, because we don't want you caught. So they basically...
What kind of drugs do you think they were on?
Yeah. Why did he think that would work?
Well, here's the thing. Let me tell you why that didn't work. Like, obviously, it is only through John Lear telling it, but... So they basically do that, and then there's this whole thing about, like, oh, don't do this, this is a secret thing. So they do that, they go and film their stuff of, like, here's the UFO, ha ha ha, we got you on the military. And then as they're driving back, they're like, man, military's so dumb, we were able to sneak through, no problem, and look at all this footage we got. And then they get pulled over by a local sheriff, who then, like, goes up to them and says, like, hi, you were told to get off the base, and now we've been called. They're like, oh, okay. And then it looks and it's like, hey, I have a question. You're the people who got pulled over on the base? And they're like, yeah. It's like, how come there's an extra person and a gun in your car now? So they got pulled over. It was a whole thing. And then, like, this, like, they're telling whatever drugged up story to, like, this just rural Nevada sheriff is just like, all right, whatever. Can I just, like, get your, like, he's like, honestly, I don't care. The military just bugged me. Can I just, like, get your licenses and go? So I can just write an incident report to shut them up. And instead of being like, are we being detained, officer? He's like, oh, my ID's in the trunk. So they're just like, okay, can you open the trunk? And then they open up the trunk and there's more guns and video footage. So it's like, yeah, you were clearly recording things. And then, because now you've given permission, that's how they are able to fully identify Bob Lazar, because he has to give his government ID over. So that's also how, John Lear does it. So basically, Bob Lazar then comes out as, hi, I was Dennis. Area 51 has threatened me ever since the interview. And that then leads to George Knapp beginning to interview Bob Lazar and what's known as the creation of the Lazar tapes, where there were several similar claims that were made to John Lear, but they were mostly focused on the creation of the reverse-engineered aircraft, and then because he was a physicist who worked with them, him actually talking a little bit more about the science of this, which then basically took UFOlogy in the 90s to the stratosphere. Like, Bob Lazar is one of the, like, supposed, like, he's a fundamental, like, whistleblower and stuff like that. In fact, according to, as I said, George Knapp, respected journalist, he's basically the UFO reporter. Like, he's like, I just watched a documentary with him not too long ago, where, like, basically, and, like, he has some form of documentation to prove it up, but basically he said that within the last 3 years, every major UAP story he's known about for about a decade. He just didn't get permission from the people to leak things yet, or to be able to report on it. So, like, he's still doing it. He's still doing shoe leather reporting. People are still sending him things that have a degree of credibility. Like, David Grush, apparently, like, Knapp interviewed him and got information from him, like, years before he openly became a whistleblower. And then Jeremy Corbell is probably the closest thing we have to Art Bell now. He's just a weird YouTube guy who just is like, let's talk about UFOs, man. So, yeah, they basically have both called him the godfather of the modern UFO conspiracy movement, and led to the resurgence of the mainstream. I mean, I'm talking X-Files, like the concept of Men in Black, firmly tied, like, Roswell was a thing, but it was, like, only tangentially related to, like, Area 51. Like, they made Area 51, the alien tape, and the creation of it were basically...
I'm just reminded of the, like, Naruto running to Area 51.
Yeah. Oh,
if I remember...
That was a good time.
I think I feel that was a pre-COVID thing, so he absolutely would have been aware of, like, there's a very high likelihood he had to learn what Naruto was, in his, like, mid-70s.
Yeah. No, it was 2019, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was, like, right before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So he was around.
Yeah, and, like, listen, like, Lazar, incredibly controversial figure in the UFO community. One, because there are questions. Apparently George Knapp found a lot of documentation that there was someone named Bob Lazar who worked at like Los Alamos and had access to Area 51, but also and there's like documents of like Bob Lazar being written about in a news article where he invented a rocket car, and it's like, this man who works for Groom Lake also has a rocket car. However, there's also no documentation that he's ever gone to anything beyond community college. He took his science education in higher education is apparently one seminar from Pierce College in Los Angeles that he took while he claimed to be getting his master's degree at MIT.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no... And notable UFO figures like Stanton Friedman have said, this man doesn't understand science. He can't answer basic physics questions. So, like, that led to Stanton Friedman basically discounting him. That being said, whatever your thoughts on Bob Lazar, we will probably cover Bob Lazar at some point, because he is also a crazy man who does a lot of things and picks up fights. Is that even if you disagree with Bob Lazar, it's one of the things of, like, you have to engage with the discourse of Bob Lazar. That is what is going on. So Corbell and George Knapp have a podcast on YouTube called Weaponized, where they talk about disclosure and everything. And in their memorial, I guess it was their memorial episode to John Lear, even though I think it came out like last year and he died like 3 years ago. They spent some time working on it. But in the parlance of the time, Knapp called him, said that at times he could be a real son of a bitch towards the end of his life, which he kind of attributed to him facing a number of health and insurance problems. And this is something that is, like, very rare to see in the kind of conspiratorial community, is that while they had good friendships with him, they clearly respected him and were sad when they died. And as George Knapp said, like, I never regret giving him a platform or my career going this way. He also made sure of, like, just because I interviewed the guy doesn't mean I believe everything he has ever said. Which, like, he is... And Jeremy Corbell, who is also, like... I first learned about Jeremy Corbell through a documentary he did on Bob Lazar, where he's basically like, yeah, Bob, you're right about everything. I can't believe the government arrested you for illegally selling nuclear material on the internet. Yeah, he claimed he was selling Element 115 before we actually developed an Element 115, which was spaceship fuel, and the U.S. government was like, I know this isn't technically enough to do anything, but you can't just send actively radioactive material over the U.S. postal system.
Why not? Why not?
Because of fascism. And the Men in Black. But, yeah, like, they were very much, we respect him, but towards later years, we are not, they distance themselves a lot. And I say this because, again, while he did say that he didn't seem to be like a guy who was in it for money, and there's not like a John Lear book. There's, as I've learned, so there's not even an official John Lear website or social media site, because people would just take it and he didn't want to do it. He would never turn down a chance to just, oh, people are going to talk to me. All right, let's do this. In which he started to just say things that David Icke of Shape-Shifting Lizard People fame would go like, I don't know, dude, I think you're going a little too far with stuff. So let's talk about a lot of the weird things that kind of happened to him. So first of all is he met Jeremy Corbell because Corbell wanted to make a documentary about him. that never got released, despite the fact that, according to both George Knapp and Corbell, he spent years going every weekend to Lear's house to just, like, help him. Like, at points he was just like, yeah, I did the plumbing, I mostly just cleaned up and stuff. And, like, he talks about, like, there are things that, like, make sense of, like, he talks about, like, helping him, like, set up, like, what was known as his command center, which, like, I've seen in some interviews with John Lear, which is, like, he just had, like, 9 TVs on his desktop or whatever, and was just, like, watching everything like a security guard.
Kind of like, Neil Breen, like a Neil Breen movie?
Yeah, kind of. Just all the laptops. However, he would do everything. However, the reason this documentary never got out, which is also something I feel is why most conspiracy documentaries don't come out, but Corbell was just, like, absolutely saying is, like, yeah, no, I couldn't release it because he promised that I could absolutely do this and he would sign away on everything. But when it came out time to start editing and release the movie, he was legally stopped because apparently John Lear had sold his life rights to another film company who wanted to do something, and was like, and then he was like, oh, you just have to pay them for it. And then Corbell's like, I don't have the money to do this. I'm just a dude in Vegas who's, like, on his weekend interviewing you. Like, where do I have the money to do this? So that's why the movie never came out, because he didn't want to fight a legal battle. And then apparently John was constantly calling him about it, about, like, can you believe what they're doing to us, not letting them release your movie? And it's like, dude, you did that. This is partially your...
I wonder how much money he got.
Yeah.
I think he got
Probably
nothing because they didn't make a movie about him. And
no, usually when you sell your rights, you get some money up front.
Listen, this is a man who I don't think understood these types of deals, and he absolutely took. He's like, remember how...
He took, like, a hypothetical percentage of something if they do make it.
Yeah. He basically, he was like, it was his version of Sean Connery turning down a role in Lord of the Rings for, like, a percentage of gross, seeing it become one of the biggest films of all time, and then taking the same deal for The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and then it absolutely bombing, and him going, like, I'm done with movies for the last 20 years of my life. So I think it was, like, one, that deal, and then two is also, like, they didn't make a movie about him, so it's like, well, no one's gonna pay attention to me now, so I need this documentary to come out. He also, and this is definitely something that definitely, I think, soured his relationship with George Knapp, probably, because he became very good friends and helped promote and start the career of another UFO conspiracy theorist known as Bill Cooper. And Bill Cooper is probably best known for writing a book called Behold a Pale Horse. This book that is basically just an edited version of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. He just changes out, like, Jews with Illuminati and stuff like that. Like, he tries to make it so it could be sold in, like, bookstores slightly less anti-Semitic, but then is just, like, becomes just, like, a rabbit. Like, by the mid-90s, just kind of stops doing UFO stuff and is just full-on crazed militia guy, sovereign citizen. And was, like, a very prominent figure in, like, the pre-Alex Jones, like, fringier than coast-to-coast stuff in, like, the 90s and stuff. And for our younger listeners, and maybe even our younger hosts, one of the reasons, despite his massive influence and importance to the conspiracy movement in America, what you might not be familiar with Bill Cooper is in mid-2001, after constantly claiming that there was going to be a false flag attack happening later in the year, he died in a shootout with, like, Arizona sheriff's deputies, including, I think he killed one of them because they tried to, like, get him on a warrant of him, like, assaulting people from, like, 1998. So yeah, he died in a shootout with the police before 9/11. So definitely didn't do great things for his career. Definitely, Bill Cooper also, on the more problematic side of how he viewed different people and everything. I'll say this about the Bill Cooper story, is that also, and this just says a lot about John Lear, is why I think he is like a serial narcissist and wants attention, is he, one of the things he did with Bill Cooper is they made up a UFO disclosure story to get people to pay attention. And then when it didn't get as popular or as much attention as his stories with George Knapp, he would then just openly admit he made up that story.
Yeah, so...
which was, funny because allegedly, and I could not find that clip of this, but it was, there's an interview with Bill Cooper and John Lear, and the interviewer asked, here's this insane belief you have, and Bill Cooper is like, it is 100% true, and here's how I know about it. And then John Lear said, Bill, what are you talking about? We made that up in my den. So I have a lot of coast-to-coast interviews with John Lear and stuff, but I also want to note the non-George Knapp, non-coast-to-coast interviews I heard, which was 2 of them. One was a special about, or a series of alien disclosure from Gaia TV that was hosted by a man whose name I did not get, but claimed to be abducted, and they were just in agreement over everything. And I also just want to note, how amazing Art Bell was. This Gaia interview was total and complete dog shit, because it was just a guy going I was abducted and here's what happened to me. And then they just say a bunch of, stupid, alien, woohoo, Anunnaki stuff. But of this 30-minute interview, half of them is just, showing clips, including the last 10 minutes is just, a woman at a news desk just going, and here's how the Anunnaki created indigo children or whatever. He also was on a fringe internet radio show from 2011, who was hosted by a man who was deranged and angry like a shock jock, a paleoconservative in the mold of Alex Jones, and a yoga guy who believed in the healing power of crystals and stuff, who said that the premise...
J.O. crystals?
Huh?
J.O. crystals?
Who knows, man? But, which also I just want to say is, we talk a lot about the things Trump stole from this country and from our culture. Mm-hmm. We do not... Every one of those guys became, a podcaster or, rubbing mushroom tips while watching Obi-Wan with the boys type guy. This is just a man who's just, believed in every obscure thing and was, mad about it, but, had this weird pretense of, I gotta hear both sides. His whole thing was, I know there's worth something if people are disagreeing with you so you can have a debate. And, literally... so much of this 2-hour first of all, at one point in this 2-hour interview is there's just silence, and it's just John Lear going hello? Is anyone there? Because the technical thing happened with the host, and he's just okay, I don't know what's going on. I don't think anyone's there. So I'm just gonna hang up now and then try calling back in.
The internet was a mistake.
It was such a mistake. And there's also a ton of points where it's just he's trying to be we need to debate and I'm challenging you on these claims, and John Lear I'll get to this is he's just well, you claim there's 40 planets in the solar system, but this guy who you've never heard of says there's 66 planets. How do you respond? And he's who cares? I don't care. There's more than 9. That's all I know. He's just so uninterested in things that require him to not just say things and get attention. So yeah, that was crazy, and all of that. I also want to note is that starting from the 90s onward, he kind of became known as an anti-disclosure believer because he felt that we were too stupid to handle the true knowledge of the universe. And, like, would, especially on his coast-to-coast appearances, would, like, you know, say, like, Art, I'm going to read you the press release that they're going to have. Would you read this to people if you were promised disclosure? And it's just, like, a thing of just, like, religion's fake. It's a thing made by aliens so we didn't kill each other. And we made a mistake on that one. So let's go on to some of his disclosure beyond there are ships and alien bodies at Area 51. Starting off with, there are 93 different alien species on Earth.
Damn. Are they hiding among us? Like,
yeah. Well, some of them are just watching.
Like, literally, like the movie Men in Black.
A more sinister version, because, like, they're not immigrants. They're like, let's just live a simple life on Earth. It is, like, straight up, like, they are part of weird conspiracies. And this also led to a lot of things like, you know, there were also multiple factions of what was going on, including he dropped the A word, Anunnaki. I believe he said that there were people living on the sun. A lot of stuff crossed over into Hollow Earth theory, and also the moon is completely artificial. So there's
like not a hologram, artificial, like as in
it was built at like Jupiter or something, and it's just kind of going along the path. Listen, I kind of stopped. I was just like, here's a dumb thing, like, I want to talk about, like, because he also was like, here's the thing, is he was not interested, like, when he got into a theory, he would, like, develop it and do it as a kind of, like, almost, like, very classical Art Bell host. Like, if you listen to the George Knapp interview, he's just like, this is just beyond the realm of belief, but also, if this ended up being true with documentation, I absolutely believe what would happen. Or believe that this is the case. And then once he got settled and was respected, he would just start saying random shit. Like, instead of like, I don't know, we have bodies, it's like, there are 93 aliens on Earth, and some of them are reptilians. And the only way you can tell the difference with a reptilian is they have an inner eyelid. And I know people who worked in a lab with them.
So he started the thing of, like, everyone just taking screenshots of, like, celebrities or royalty or whatever, like, oh, look, it's the inner eyelid.
Which I also want to go is, like, it was so funny because in the guy interview, it's just, like, a guy who's just, like, sprouting new age UFO woo-woo. But the angry mad guy is just, like, constantly going, like, citing these people and saying these things like, it is the truth and all of that, which is hilarious, of just, like, well, what about, we all know the Earth is hollow and the moon is fake, but is it a hologram or is it blah, blah? Anyway, the classic gray aliens are actually not really aliens so much as automatons and robots that are built from Zeta Reticuli. Also, X-Files Deep Lore, the aliens from the X-Files are from the planet Zeta Reticuli, so there's that. So, here's what it comes down to, is that aliens are also responsible for humanity. Because humans are a scientific experiment, specifically in our souls, in which, so our souls are an experiment by aliens to discover something. And what happens is...
sounds like Scientology.
Well, okay, they're not beating the allegations when I say... when you die, what happens is you go to a waiting room of the fourth dimension, and then you see your entire life. And if you are worthy, you live in the fourth dimension. And if you're not worthy, you... I forget. I think this was from 2011, so it could have been before we found out about the fifth dimension. So if you are worthy, you get to live. If not, you get reincarnated. And you don't remember things, but sometimes there are glitches, so people will remember. There's that. It's great. We have multiple treaties with aliens, and all of that. The Cold War was false because it was just like trying to like cover up alien stuff. Religion.
Wait, so like Russia didn't exist?
No, Russia existed.
The USSR didn't exist.
They just all work for MJ-12 or whatever type of thing. Yeah, like religion. Basically, every major world events is aliens did that. Like Jesus was an alien or something, and it was to like
just Prometheus.
Yeah, basically.
That's just the plot of Prometheus.
Hey, his influence is felt even then. The classic, they're disappointed at how we've treated the Earth, so they're starting to be a little bit more thing.
That's fair.
Yeah, 40 planets in the solar system, so...
So just in our solar system,
yeah.
There's 4... Oh. Okay.
All of that.
Where are they?
Who knows?
Well,
there's so many lies, and science isn't real.
Wait, so you all know how we discovered, I think Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, right? No, I think maybe not Uranus, but definitely Neptune and Pluto.
Yeah.
It was we knew planets had to be there because of the way other planets' gravity was, like the gravity of those planets was affecting the other planets.
Yeah.
So if there were like 30 more planets, do you think we would have found them by now?
Well, they're covering them up.
Yeah, maybe they cloaked them in a cloaking device.
But no. The cloaking device wouldn't cloak the gravitational effects.
I honestly, Chris, I think you are stuck in the orthodoxy of gravity as a consistent and fundamental force of the universe, which is, I think, your problem with understanding. Yeah. He also just basically says most science is wrong, which could be like a way to explain it, but could also be part of his weird like narcissism and laziness. Because whenever he's confronted about a kind of technical question, whether it be legitimate physics, a la Element 115, or whether it is about like the actual mechanics of the hollow Earth or the moon as a starship, he's like, I don't know these things. I'm not a scientist. I just know that what we've been told is wrong.
Okay.
So there's that. We have multiple treaties with aliens, which have allowed a number of things, including, the fact that he proclaims that every human being is abducted at least 3 points in their life as part of this like scientific experiment that is humans. Some of us are abducted more.
Wow, they must have aliens working overtime abducting all these people.
I mean, there's 93 different species of them, so just like, and think of like how large you have to be a galactic empire and stuff. So like,
no, I'm just picturing like a grunt alien abductor, just like, I got another 10-hour shift of abductions I gotta do.
God, and it's I have to deal with these people.
And it's always like when they're babies and at 10 years old is like the consistent times.
Do you think there's an abductor union?
I feel if they are better than us, I support the alien abduction union. If they're the alien abductors who are like checking in to make sure our souls are good and stuff, not the ones who are doing human cattle mutilation, which he was also a proponent of. Some of them just kidnap us to do science. Bad science. Did you know that all planets in the solar system can support life?
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Some don't seem very hostile.
I don't want to make it clear. I'm not talking about this like namby-pamby, like, there might be microbes on like Titan or whatever, or, there's single cell things in the depths of Europa. I mean, full-on humans living on these planets in Earth-like conditions. Because of, and this is like the most back and forth he had with like that angry David Icke guy, who was able to both yell about gun control, UFO cover-up, and minorities getting welfare all at once. It was really a throwback to just deranged people on the internet listening to all of that. We're abducted and mutilated by all of that. Every planet can support life, whether it is through a consciousness field or some other mechanism of being told lies. Apparently, he has a thing and an issue with Graham Hancock, who's was he Graham Hancock? I I'm now forgetting, but the guy who... Richard Hoagland. He has a thing with Richard Hoagland fighting about, like, ancient buildings on Mars and stuff. He says Hoagland is controlled opposition. And reptilians are totally a thing. And then the two I want to get to before we get into the big 9/11 thing was, one is the moon landing was fake, and he knows it's fake because it depicts it as this, like, barren landscape in 1969, whereas he claims in, like, 1957 we signed a treaty with the moon people and it was totally livable and fine.
Oh. But the moon's also fake.
Yeah.
So...
I mean, with our telescopes can, like, see the surface of the moon pretty clearly.
They're really hiding, Chris.
On the dark side?
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Or inside.
This is why I said he reminds me of both people, of both Stan Johnson, because he's, like, I do not think he made a lot of money. Like, he is constantly, like, talking about how, like, he cannot get security clear. Like, you know, it makes sense why he would have trouble, because... Oh yeah, he also says every single pilot knows about this, but shout out to season 2 of The Rehearsal. They're afraid to say anything because they'll get their medical certification pulled. So, like, every pilot knows something is up, but they can't say anything or they lose their job. But, yeah, so he says that he also has lost so many jobs by going out on disclosure because, like he'll interview with, like, Boeing or Northrop Grumman or something for just, like, consulting work. But given the nature of aviation at those companies, like, you sometimes need some degree of security clearance to see, like, secret government documents, or you have to sign an NDA for corporate secrets, and sometimes they'll run you through the same review process so they know that they can trust you, the same way as if you handed them classified material. And he says that he never got these jobs because they would just call the Pentagon. It's like, hi, can you run an intelligence check on John Lear? And they're like, oh, fuck that guy. Apparently Bob Lazar in his interview for Area 51 was asked, do you know John Lear? Like, apparently he was, like, persona non grata there. However, the other thing I want to say is that he said that the president didn't really know what was going on because there were several security clearances above the president, and MJ-12 basically ran everything and wouldn't tell the president stuff. And one of the reasons that they did that is because Kennedy wanted to end the war. They briefed Kennedy about UFOs as a thing. And then Kennedy found out that the only reason we were in Vietnam was because we wanted to create a distraction so people wouldn't talk about UFOs. And Kennedy was like, I don't think that's enough reason for us to be in Vietnam. So they killed him. Or the aliens killed him. That. And then after that, they stopped briefing the president about UFOs. So the only president since Kennedy to actually know the truth about UFOs is Richard Nixon, because he was debriefed when he was vice president with Eisenhower.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I do want to say, like, again, I was talking to Sanjay, like, this is a love of the game thing, because not only is he constantly talking about him losing jobs, but specifically, there's I believe it's a 2009 interview with Art Bell on Coast to Coast AM, or it might have been the one he did. Actually, no, that's different. He did an open lines call in the late 90s with Art Bell in, like, 95 or 96. So when Art Bell was still the main host. And when they did open lines, it was about, similar to the Stan Johnson and Dreamland episode, it was about half people asking questions about disclosure, and then half people just ragging on him of, like, was he a member of the Masons? What was his connection to the occult? They kept pointing out the fact that he was very adamant in the 80s and 90s to not discuss what his religious beliefs are, and would just instead kind of go off on, like, I'm not going to say about religious beliefs. All I'm going to say is if you look at something like the King James Bible, there's the Council of Nicaea, like a very 2000s edgelord atheist, like, let me tell you how the Bible was really written, type thing, but not imply anything other than just like you can't trust church history for all of that. And like he got a ton of shit about, I would say he probably got more shit about like, we don't trust you, John Lear. And again, to be fair, this is a man saying just insane batshit things. And also, I'm gonna go back to the fact that he just like openly admits that he was doing black ops for the CIA during Vietnam. Like, and he's like one of the few, like, the whole thing about CIA policy is like, we will neither confirm nor deny the employment of any agent, current or former, because of long-term national security things. Like, it's basically been standing policy of the CIA since it was founded to like never comment on who was working for them. He's one of the few people that the CIA is like, oh yeah, he totally flew missions for us. Everything he says is true. Because it, like, he was just saying that and he didn't really go into details, and then, like, someone did a FOIA request of stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, he was every place he said he was during Vietnam. So, yeah. So that then leads us into, I think, a good point to kind of end on, which is, like, and it also is a good thing of just comparing about how he would, like, kind of engage with a topic and try and do it intellectually, and then just would go, like, I don't know, what's going to get me attention? So, his other biggest disclosure happened when, in his 2009 interview on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell had him on to discuss his thoughts about September 11th and what was the truth about what was going on. And I was very surprised by this for a few reasons. One of which was my recollection, though now that I think about it, I've never actually heard Art Bell say this, is like, I always thought that like Art Bell was like, that was the one conspiracy he never wanted to discuss, was like 9/11 stuff. And I don't know whether that was wrong or whether that was just like he didn't want to do like any like too elaborate things, whereas like he'd believe it was a deep state thing or whatever. So, John Lear basically said that it was, we needed another, similar to Vietnam, we needed a dust up in the Middle East to kind of cover up whatever the conspiracy things were happening and going to go on. And, you know, 9/11 was just a false flag to invade the Middle East for sinister reasons. He made a lot of claims, like the fact that Flight 93 was actually shot down. It wasn't just a crash, which is a very prominent 9/11 truth conspiracy theory. He also, and this is where he wrote a affidavit saying, here are all my actual accomplishments. He also said that it was the government story was questionable in a number of ways. And this is where his flight stuff came in, is he said that it was very questionable that these were Saudis who were able to just use flight training. Because according to him, you had to, the hits were so precise, you had to be a highly skilled pilot in order to make sure that everything went off the way it was. This is what he said. Chris, you're looking at me very skeptically. How many different airplanes have you flown? Because he's flown over 100.
I can't imagine it'd be that hard to hit a skyscraper.
I agree with you, but it's actually, I will say this, is it's actually a kind of interesting point, and it does kind of relate to, like, his thing, because his whole point was, the big thing was that you had to be incredibly highly trained to do that, and his argument was he doubted the story of how 9/11 happened and who was responsible, because one, he doubts that pilots would have the skill to be able to hit a building as accurately as they did without actual flight time in a 747, to which he said most training on a 747 also only takes place on a simulator, and it's incredibly hard to be able to even rent out a 747 and get flight time because they're so expensive that when a company owns a lot of them, they're constantly in use or in maintenance. So there's not a lot of like downtime to just have someone borrow a 747. And he said that this was also suspicious because, one, how are you able to do that? And two, if these people were Saudi, it added to that they would be able to get the proper training because, as he noted, that in the Middle East, it is almost impossible to find a 747 because of their historical connections to France. They mostly use French aeronautic companies, both for geographic and traditional reasons, which means that they use Airbuses instead of 747 for international travel. So it was very suspicious that how would they be so good at a 747 when their country of origin would have this very specific plane, and it'd be incredibly hard for foreigners to get real-life flight experience with this particular model of airplane. So what do we think about his claims on 9/11?
I mean, once you're in the air, was it really that hard for them to fly a 747? Because isn't the hardest thing about flying like the takeoff and landing?
Yeah.
And if they were still pilots, so I imagine they knew enough.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, because he has taken Misty, your criticism, to heart and re-examined. So on, what was it? So, the show was like Actual Reality Radio or something. Like, I doubt it's still being aired, but we'll still post a link to it in the description. He changed his view. So in 2011, he talked about his views on 9/11. And actually it was hard light holograms.
Oh.
Wait, the planes?
Yeah.
Oh, and somebody
holograms, and then basically someone posted charges and it detonated them.
I don't know. Because I mentioned hard light specifically is another Star Trek reference, is like the holodeck in Star Trek like uses hard light holograms, so it's like, oh, this is like, it's not just seeing whatever, it's like you can touch it and it feels like an item. He said that hard light holograms were flown into the World Trade Center. To do all of those things, it was probably an Anunnaki conspiracy, and all of those like alien forces and all of that. It also, he wanted to discuss, is it was part of a series of false flags that were being carried out and we needed to re-examine, including the then recent Fukushima disaster. He also said that, like, Fukushima did actually happen. It was a nuclear disaster by sinister forces trying to make a point.
Oh, point? What was the point?
Well, it's very important to know who is responsible. So I want to ask, who do you think he blamed Fukushima on?
Godzilla.
Classy, but no.
The reptilians?
No. Yeah. One more guess.
The Russians.
Closer.
Close.
But not Russia.
Somewhere close to Russia?
Not geographically.
The Israelis?
Yes. I'm actually surprised. He 100% blamed Fukushima on the Israelis. And what I find weird about this, and I just have to note this, and this is the last kind of view I have, is like, everything else, he just goes off the complete deep end and will just believe any, like, thing that makes David Icke look like the more sane and sensible person. And then comes to Fukushima, where it's somewhat alien-related, but he says, no, actually, it's because, Israel did it because, they had a deal with, like, the Japanese to help them develop nuclear power, and then they were mad that there was some talk in Japan about selling certain technology to the Iranians, so that they did Fukushima as like a threat to the Japanese to stop making deals with Iran.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think Ghislaine Maxwell would know about this?
Well,
Was she involved?
She's never
Yeah.
knowingly met with anyone who was a Mossad agent, so
I don't know.
I just listen.
I did notice.
I'm just like I get why it's a tempting target, and like, yeah, there's a lot of things. And yes, they have Mossad in particular is like a very. I'm trying to say this without like I don't want to like praise them, but I also don't want to just brag on the Jewish nation's intelligence service. Like Mossad arguably is the most elite intelligence agency in the world, so like they are capable of a lot, and they do a lot. But I do feel like, I don't know, like, I don't think Japan was that close to Iran. Like, why did it have to be Mossad who did it? Why couldn't it have been aliens? Like, I just feel like there's so much on the record stuff about Israel. We have a century of just criticizing them for things that they openly do. We don't even have to get into, like, their actual evil projects, let alone made up things like, like causing Fukushima. Like,
well, I think someone like Lear wouldn't care about the things that they actually did.
Yeah.
Because of racism.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Listen, it there's a lot of things, but yeah, so that is John Lear, the man who, you know, just really, I gotta say, his legacy to me is just like, very rarely have I heard someone so reliant on the conspiracy movement for their media career, without there being personal animosity, to straight up disavow a source. Like, we see all this infighting all the time, but it's always like, oh, you fucked my girlfriend? Do you know this person was lying about whatever? Whereas George Knapp was just like, listen, I respected him. Our relationship did not end as I would have liked it. But he was important, and also, I do not endorse any of his views in any capacity.
Yeah, I did notice there was a lack of the aliens aren't trying to sleep with us.
Oh, I just didn't.
Oh, you didn't include. Okay, so there is.
He didn't make it like, I think because he was just a kind of like classic like mid-century baby boomer guy. He was just like, there were implications that there's a lot of hybrids. He was just like kind of implied it was more science than carnal relations.
Okay, so they're just like maybe genetic testing.
Basically, if you would like to know, I think a really good way, if you want to understand the complexity of John Lear's views on aliens, but also have a kind of filter of like the really outrageous and crazy stuff, just watch all the alien episodes of the X-Files in chronological order. And it goes from like, oh, this is some things going on. And then by the time you get to the revival, you're just like, wait, we have spaceships with cloaking devices now? And vaccines actually are evil? What's going on? Why is the cigarette man still alive? It seems weird that Boulder would be wanted for treason and they just let him back in the FBI. That's gotta be something, right? So yeah, that is John Lear, the man you can blame for why Chris Cuomo will talk about UFOs in between getting into fights with AOC and defending his brother on Twitter.
So I'm gonna put my definitive take on UFOs. So the only way aliens would have visited Earth was if faster than light travel exists. And I'll believe that when I see it.
Well, according to Bob Lazar, we can get to, it takes us about 8 hours to get to, like, Arcturus or whatever.
See, I don't believe in faster than light travel. So any quote-unquote legitimate UFO sightings just classified military technology.
Yeah, I think for me, I want them to be real, but alas, I don't think they are.
And I will, and this is why it's Chris's definitive take, but not the take of the podcast, because I am a defender of UFO sightings are mostly real. They are beings, but aliens do not exist. They are demons trying to trick us. Or, when I do a lot of drugs, they're actually fae and changeling stuff, like in D&D.
Yeah. Or it's ourselves visiting from the future.
Yes, that's a fun one. I like... Oh, yeah. I cannot... Just also, just so much about John Lear. I had to keep it consistent, and I feel spiritually, whenever someone has a crazy take on 9/11, I feel like I have to mention it. But I had to cut out a lot of stuff about his views on time travel, and like a huge fight on a Coast to Coast he was on with a caller about the nature of time travel. And like the caller was basically like he was very clearly like a skeptic trying to do it, and it was like, well, here's the thing, we can't do time travel in either direction because matter has to stay consistent, so you can't travel in time because you're creating matter that would not exist, or you're creating an imbalance in matter, whatever. It's like the kind of logic. And then John Lear's response is basically just like, no, you don't understand. That's not how time travel works. If you go back in time, everything happens, and it's fine. Like, if you go back and kill your dad, all you've done is kill your dad, you're still fine. Which is like, what?
He couldn't wrap his mind around the concept of a paradox, so it's just like, yeah, it's totally fine.
Nothing, no consequences will occur.
I mean, listen, I need to... something I'm curious about is, like, the element 115 thing is big in UFO circles. And I think Lazar probably... I will also, like, seriously, like, I do not believe Bob Lazar at all. I think there's way too many weird things. But I do think it was a bold move of him to say, like, yeah, it's element 115. Because, like, I understand if you're vaguely aware of science in the late 80s, like, we're never going to find this thing in my lifetime. It's cool. And then, of course, like, in 2011, like, a Russian physicist, like, was able to synthesize it, and it's an actual element on the periodic table now. I would like to see both of their answers to, like, we actually have element 115, what's going on? And yeah. I can tell you what John Lear would say. It's like, well, if you believe in traditional elements, yeah, sure, I guess that's 115, but have you considered it's something else that means I'm telling the truth?
Have you considered science is irrelevant?
Oh yeah, I do just also want to say is like, I think I mentioned this earlier, but really love how in that there was an interview where it's like on the realjohnlear.com, it said that he was really investigating chemtrails, and in an interview someone brought that up, and he's like, oh, tell me what's going on with chemtrails. And it's like, well, your website said you were researching it. It's like, oh, I don't have a website. But what's even funnier is of just like the mindset of some of these people. It's like, well, folks, do not believe the website, therealjohnlear.com. And, you know, also, like, they're really pretending to be you, I think, because they have an email account that is realjohnlear, or is john@realjohnlear.com, and I emailed them about an interview, and then when we set up the interview, I realized it was your personal, like, Cox email address, and it's just like, you thought it was real, and then when he responds, it's in a completely different email, and you thought it was still a credible source? Just so...
No.
Also, this is like in 2013 on a guy on the internet. So, like, he should know how email works.
Yeah.
Alright, so I think that's all we got for today.
For American Dreamland, I'm Max Chavez.
I'm Misty Stone.
And I'm Christopher Locken.
Remember the stars.